Well, now comes the part where we just wait.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you don't believe me, I'm going to prove it. I got a lower third where I'm called Sully. I've been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now, and I'm wrapping up my sixth full season here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. If you're listening each day, be sure to leave that banner, that hashtag, that whatever it's called. It says Everyday Sully. So we have an idea who's listening to us every single day. Hey, today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. You can start your season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's right. You don't even have to win. You just got to go to FanDuel.com to get started. All right. It is late Monday. I'm recording this, and there's no baseball today. The reason there's no baseball today is because the Mets lost last night and the Guardians lost a few nights ago. This would have been Game 7 of the NLCS and Game 6 of the American League Championship Series. So, the Yankees and the Dodgers did what they needed to do. And so we're taking a look. These are the buildup for what should be a really interesting World Series. Obviously, I've not made my emotions, for the lack of a better word, secret. I'm a native New Englander. I'm not a Yankee fan, but I'm also not dead. And I understand the historical significance of a Dodger-Yankee World Series, going back to 1941 all the way to 1981. I understand the significance when the Celtics play the Lakers. I mean, I understand when you have two teams with a ton of history and there's a big gap in that history, I understand why those are good for the game. I understand why the attention is good for the game, to have the big stars on the big stage. And I also think, let's face it, it's good for the integrity of the regular season if every once in a while the two best teams play each other. It's a lot of fun when there's a big upset and a big upset. And did I mention a big upset? But I heard nothing but complaints last year when it was the Arizona Diamondbacks, a great underdog story, against the Texas Rangers, another great underdog story. By the way, one thing I mentioned this the other day, I'm going to mention now. Don't bring up TV ratings around me. Wrong show. I do not care. There's not an atom of my body that cares about television ratings. I am not a sales rep for Tide. I'm not selling any ads. I don't care about it. I don't care what the box office returns is for a movie I really liked or a movie I really disliked. I thought Beetlejuice stunk. And I'm a huge Beetlejuice fan. I thought the sequel stunk. But it made money. I don't care. I thought the movie Coda, which came out a few years ago, was a lovely, wonderful movie. They make much money, so they make much money. I don't care. And sometimes you see great matchups between two teams, which on paper are what? Greatest World Series I ever saw was the 1991 World Series between Minnesota and Atlanta, two teams that I died at that moment in 1991 when I was a 19-year-old student in New York City. I had never stepped foot in Minnesota or in Atlanta. And I still have never stepped foot in Minnesota. And yet, here we are. But stars in the World Series are important. It's frustrating when you look at a career of a great Hall of Famer and you say, oh man, they never played in the World Series. Ernie Banks never played in the World Series. Ken Griffey Jr. never played in the World Series. Billy Williams never played in the World Series. so many tremendous players never got to play on that high, that grand stage. Well, we are going to have Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani not only play in the World Series, but get a ring. There's always these lists of who's the greatest star to never win a World Series. And inevitably, Griffey and Bonds and Ted Williams will be included on there, and Ernie Banks and Tony Gwynn will be on there. And, some great players who have played for the Cubs all those years or the Red Sox all those years will be on there. And in a couple of days, either Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani will have their name removed from that list. And you will see that one of those players will basically have the hard part of their Hall of Fame resume done. Judge or Ohtani is going to win yet another, most valuable player. And he's going to be one of the few players, I think Frank Robinson. Isn't Frank Robinson the only one to win the MVP of both leagues? I think I'm right. I know he was the first. And he will be back next year as a pitcher with MVPs, all-star appearances, and a World Series championship. Unless it's Aaron Judge, who will have his multiple MVPs, his record-breaking season, and, a World Series ring. All they'll have to do after that is hang around. Just hang around and pass a few milestones. I like it when a star wins. It's fun. It's enjoyable. Yes, it's nice every once in a while to have a completely anonymous team win, but I like seeing my stars win championships, which brings about what do I think is going to happen. But we are doing a live one here, and it's very clear that Jace Peer is wearing Jace's heart on their sleeve with a "Let's Go Yankees." What is my prediction at this point? These are two very similar teams. They have great big stars. Juan Soto and Gerrit Cole on the Yankees. You have, Mookie Betts and the like on the Dodgers. Notice I said "and the like" because Freddie Freeman may not be on the roster. The dude's hurt. He couldn't play for Game 6, and who knows? Maybe he can rehab and have a week off and see where they are. If I were the Dodgers, I would not take him off the roster. But come Game 1, if he's hurting, you got to let him go. You can't waste a roster spot in the World Series, especially especially the way the rosters are set up. They're very similar in another sense. I just bit my tongue. I'm not even going to edit that out. I can't because it's live. They both have gassed bullpens. They both have bullpens that I think they go to way too often. Now, the Dodgers are in a situation, their pitching staff is decimated in terms of pitchers who can give them length. When you can get someone like a Flaherty, that's fabulous, but they're going to throw 2 bullpen games in the World Series. The Yankees aren't because they have Gerrit Cole. And Gerrit Cole, in so many ways, is the X factor of this World Series. He is the legit ace who's healthy. And if they let him pitch 6 or 7 innings, the way an ace is supposed to, then it could give the Yankees bullpen a bit of a respite. Now, there's the opportunity that Nestor Cortez Jr. could be back in the roster. He did not pitch or was not on the roster for the division series against Kansas City or the LCS against Cleveland. Having a fresh arm in there who at times can pitch like an all-star. And we saw in that game in Chicago where he pitched the final, 4 1/3 innings? Jace Peer, you probably remember that. When the Yankees were still trying to figure out their bullpen, they said, heck with it. Just have him go the rest of the way. That was pretty cool for him. And to have the Yankees bring in a fresh arm like that and have a Gerrit Cole, I think is the tiny advantage. Now, Jace Peer, who's posting all sorts of stuff, says Yankees in 7. I think you might be right. This is not my heart. This is my head. Obviously, as a native New Englander, I want the Yankees to eat it. But as a baseball observer, right now, I think Cole is the one tiny advantage that New York has over Los Angeles. Now, that being said, another thing both these teams have is the ability to slug their way out of trouble. Have you noticed that Shohei Ohtani has been starting to heat up a little bit? Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that Ohtani, who had some slumping moments in the series against San Diego, has got some big hits? Now, he was outshined by Tommy Edman, and which, by the way, is the great thing about the postseason, is you get of all the superstars in the world, and it might be a Tommy Edman who comes through and has the series that he had, where he had a 1.022 OPS, drove in 11 runs in 6 games, including the big home run. But don't sleep on Ohtani. Ohtani in the league championship series, if you like batting average, he batted 364. If you like OPS, his OPS was 1.185. He also had a pair of home runs. Also, take a look at Max Muncy with his 630 on base percentage. And Mookie Betts, who drove in 9 runs and had great numbers, was overshadowed by Tommy Edman. So there are bats on the Dodgers who could slug their way through some of their issues. Now, of course, the Yankees have bats too. You know, Jazz Chisholm Jr. did not have, and some of those bats didn't exactly light up Cleveland's pitching. Jazz Chisholm Jr. Didn't score a run, didn't drive in a run, and his OPS was under 5. Now, we saw Aaron Judge got that huge home run to tie the game in Game 3, and he had 2 home runs in the league championship series, but did little else other than that. Those were the only 2 extra base hits he got, and he only got 1 other hit. Those 2 home runs got 1 other hit. Granted, he walked a couple of times. So, you know, Judge hasn't heated up yet. Soto had a great series, obviously. Stanton had a great series, obviously. And Volpe had a fine series. And lest we forget who I think was arguably the MVP of the series was Gleyber Torres. Giancarlo Stanton won the MVP, and I'm not going to have pitchforks and torches over that. But Torres was in the middle of everything. Both of their bullpens are gassed. And we've all seen Gerrit Cole can sometimes in the postseason pitch like an absolute Cy Young stud. And we've also seen him, like he did in the wild card game against Boston. Granted, he probably was hurt then, but boo-hoo. We've seen him get clobbered too. With my head, I'm saying Yankees in 7. With my heart, I want it to be Dodgers in 3. That's right, in 3. I want them to beat them so badly the first 3 games that the Yankees don't even show up. They forfeit Game 4. I don't think that's going to happen. And if I did, I would go to FanDuel right now and put in all my money. Hey, let's hear from our friends over at FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats and view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. All right, let's take a look at some other things. First of all, I got a lot of notices and texts and comments on YouTube and on Twitter. And a lot of people were pointing about the inequity of the fact that the Yankees were a big, high-paying organization and the payroll for Cleveland was so much less. And what I have one, let's see, one of the people wrote, this was Joey Coffey, 8045 wrote, the Yankees only get credit for having the luxury of resources. I get that. I understand that sentiment. I understand that narrative. But I do want to say this, and I do think this is important, okay? When you think about who some of the wealthiest owners in baseball are, do you know what that list would include? That would include the owners of the Cleveland Guardians. Before I hear any more complaints about payroll disparity between Cleveland and the Yankees, and I wrote this on Twitter or whatever it's called now, the Guardians are owned by the Dolans, who are in the top 5 of Major League owner wealth. They are both billionaires. The owners are swimming in money, and they own a team that plays in a division that is potentially winnable. Yeah, Jeff Cohen says it right. Dolans are billionaires. They have the money to pick up the players needed to do this. They have the money. This team needed one more bat and one more arm. And if they had acquired one more bat and one more arm, they probably would have won at least one. Would they have beaten the Yankees? I don't know, but there definitely would have been a game 6. And this is a team with the longest playoff drought. All this team needs to do is win it once. This team wins it once. It's a generational event for fans of the Indians, the Guardians, and if anyone's left over who called them the Naps. This is, and this is a team that has a superstar who stayed in Jose Ramirez. They have a fan base that is drooling to win, a traditional fan base, and a team that plays in a division that, yes, gave us 3 playoff teams this year and had a 4th team that just barely missed. So it's not like the AL Central are punching bags. But that being said, you put a team in there with one more good pitcher and one more good batter, and this team will be contending. San Diego did that. Granted, it hasn't resulted in a pennant yet, but you can't look at that team and say, well, they don't have the resources in the budget, blah, 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 blah. They've been bringing in stars. And if a bounce here, a bounce there, they could have gone ahead. And maybe, they looked like they had the Dodgers on the ropes. It didn't turn out that way, but they made it to the League Championship Series a few years before that, and they look stacked heading forward. Cleveland is the team with the longest championship drought currently in baseball. And, of course, they had the shot this year. The 2 games they lost at home were theirs for the taking. And they could have sent the series back to New York, and then who knows what you would have had. Who knows? By the way, I want to address one other comment that I got. We'll get to some other viewer messages later, but Texas Danger 5 said should never change their name to the Guardians. Yeah, because the name Indians was such a good luck charm. The name Indians just brought around so many titles. You got to stop dying on that hill. In the era of the wild card, Game 7 of the World Series has gone to extra innings twice. Both times they were lost by the Cleveland Indians. Do you know how hard it is for the Cleveland Indians to have won the World Series? They didn't win the World Series when they had Albert Bell and Kenny Lofton. They didn't win the World Series when they had Corey Kluber and Francisco Lindor. They couldn't win the World Series in the major league movies. That's right. They never won it when it was fiction. So don't talk to me about the name being the problem. This is not like the Yankees changing their name. It's the freaking Indians. And if they win with the Guardians, you'll love them. By the way, I'm recording this on Monday, and it is still Zack Greinke's birthday. I want to wish happy birthday to Zack Greinke, who did not play last year. Looks like his career is done. I've always been a rabid Zack Greinke fan. He helped remove some of the stigma for mental issues. And as a special ed teacher, I'm very, very happy about that. that it's not about toughness. It's not about not being able to hack it. Mental illness is a real thing. Let's remove the stigma from it. And Zack Greinke addressed it head on and had one of the great attitudes in baseball history. This was a guy who did not GAF. And, Mom, you could look that up later. I love that when he signed a free agent contract, I believe it was with Arizona, that he said, when someone asked him, would he sign with the last place team? And he said, sure, if they offer the most money. He didn't seem to be fazed by anything in big league baseball and came out left and right and had a fantastic career. An underrated bad postseason decision by Hinch when he was managing the Astros. Everyone remembers that he didn't bring Gerrit Cole into Game 7 and let Game 7 of the World Series in 2019 get away. What few people remember is that Zack Greinke was dealing. And yes, he had just let up a home run to Anthony Rendon, but he was still pitching great. And they lifted him, and then the Astros bullpen fell apart. And I keep thinking about what Greinke was acquired by the Angels in 2012. And the Angels did not re-sign him. And they backed up the Brinks truck for Josh Hamilton, who busted. And Greinke signed with the Dodgers and pitched quite well, thank you very much. I can't help but wonder if the Angels backed up the Brinks truck for him, and they would have had an ace alongside Mike Trout. Right around the time the Angels actually made the postseason in 2014, if Angels history would have been a lot different. But I want to tell you my single favorite thing about Zack Greinke and why this is a guy who just doesn't care about some of the things that you care about. Zack Greinke pitched for how many years he pitched? He pitched for 20 seasons. He started in 2004 with the Kansas City Royals, wound up winning the Cy Young Award in 2009, and was the runner-up for the Cy Young Award in 2015, and was top 10 Cy Young Award winner 3 other times, finishing as high as 4th in 2017, winning multiple Golden Gloves, All-Star appearances, leading the league in earned run average, ERA plus, lots of great stuff. He finished his career with a bad season, albeit a truly bad season, with the 2013 Royals, a team that the very next year would go on to the playoffs. He finished with, listen to this, he finished with 2,979 strikeouts. 2,979. He is 21 strikeouts away from 3,000 in his career. And he retired. 21 strikeouts and playing in a league where everyone swings and misses. He is like 4 starts. He's basically 4 decent starts of, striking out 5 every, maybe 6 in one game and 5 in the rest, from joining the 3,000 strikeout club. Do you know how many pitchers in the history of Major League Baseball have struck out 3,000 batters? Do you know how many? 19. Nolan Ryan has the most. Randy Johnson, Roger Clemens, Steve Carlton, Burt Blyleven, Tom Seaver, Don Sutton, Gaylord Perry, Walter Johnson, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, Greg Maddux, Phil Niekro, Fergie Jenkins, Pedro Martinez, Bob Gibson, Kurt Schilling, CC Sabathia, and John Smoltz. And that's it. He is 21 strikeouts away from making it an even 20 and joining that list, that paragon, that pantheon is the word I wanted to say, of great pitchers. And he's like, I'm done. That is a guy who does not care about what you and I are caring about. He's obviously a Hall of Famer. And quite frankly, if I had PrizePicks, I would be putting him in my lineup all the time. Hey, let's hear from our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks have made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Just make your more than or less than pick on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your money in cash. Run your game all season long. PrizePicks is the best way to get on the action in over 30 states, including Florida, Georgia, Texas, and right here in California. And PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You could double your money even if one of your picks doesn't do that. And PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I get my money in as little as 15 minutes. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Now, let me say that again. Download the app, use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. This is all part of PrizePicks. PrizePicks! Run your game. By the way, Jeff Cohen, who's a everyday listener, wrote this. The Brooklyn Dodgers have a more recent World Series than the Indians-Guardians. This is how long it's been for the Indians/Guardians franchise. When they won the World Series, they beat the Braves. The Boston Braves. The Braves have gone on to win World Series in Milwaukee and Atlanta. And another thing to remember, Milwaukee has a more recent World Series winner than Cleveland. Not the Brewers, the Braves. There's another thing. Syracuse has a more recent NBA title than Cleveland has a World Series winner. Oh, by the way, congratulations to the New York Liberty. And the city of New York has a championship. They've been waiting a while, and lo and behold, they have a new championship. The Liberty was able to get a title, the first one of a major league in New York. Sorry, Major League Soccer. Everyone on your league will scatter in a heartbeat to go to the Premier League. So congratulations for the Liberty for getting it. There you go. Let's go to a couple other viewer messages here. There we go. We have this is like a little preview here from Ruth Workington. Says, looking forward to your thoughts about getting starters to go longer again. Yeah, I'm going to go a whole long thing about that because I think it is organizational. I've said before that the fact that pitchers are not going long, the ace pitchers are not going long, is nothing to do with analytics, nothing to do with sabermetrics. It's all financial. They realize that ace pitchers cost more money, so let's create a system where we don't need them. But here's something I do want to bring up. I have brought up the fact that we have, in the past, PDs were used to prevent injury. And I am all for the use of performance-enhancing drugs in a system where you have doctor supervision. It's not being done secretly. It's not being done covertly. It's not A-Rod's cousin shooting someone in the ass with a needle. That it's actual medicine. You know, we've seen it being used as, HGH and things like that were designed so people could heal. And if that is one of the things that is keeping pitchers from staying healthy, then bring it back. Don't abuse it. Have it being done under medical supervision. Don't ever be covert. It's like going to the doctors. I had to take a steroid last week. Did you know that? Because I had an infection. And part of the infection required a steroid to be taken to wipe out this infection that I had. Let's do it on the up and up. We're using these things for legal reasons. I had mine done with a use of a doctor. And let me tell you something, my fastball is snapping off right now. And But I also, a lot of people have written to me about things like, Bob Gibson didn't need to be relieved and Walter Johnson. You don't need to go back that far. There's a little preview of an upcoming show. You have to go back to last decade. You notice I just mentioned Zack Greinke? He was part of really the last wave of ace pitchers that included Scherzer, Kershaw, Lincecum, Kane, Bumgarner, Verlander, CC Sabathia, Cliff Lee, Roy Halladay, first base Bugs Bunny, all these people who could give a team 7 or 8 innings a game and not blow out the bullpen. You can have a bullpen game every once in a while if you also have some inning-eating starters. And they don't all have to be superstar starters. They could be a Mark Burley, a very good starter who does the job well. It could be a Cole Hamels who does the job well and may shine on October, as did Burley. And Andy Pettit, who did use PEDs. But let's use them on the up and up. And maybe we will have pitchers to be able to go longer than 5 innings. It's just a thought. I'm going to be doing a show that's being dropped tomorrow, or being dropped on Wednesday. We're going to be talking Dodgers, and we're going to be talking with Jeff Snyder of Locked On Dodgers. And we're also going to be talking with Booney this week. And Booney is the new host of Locked On A's. Remember, I was the host of Locked On A's for this year, but new host has come in. I'm going to have some fun. All right, so follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, talking about us waiting for the World Series, and it can't come fast enough. This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.